Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something kind of wild. We're talking about a psychological playbook that started out as a bizarre Cold War interrogation tactic and has now found its perfect home, yep, right inside your phone. Okay, let's dive right in. This quote, wow, it really gets to the absolute heart of what we're exploring. It's a chilling idea, isn't it? The thought that the very same principles once used to break down minds in secret chambers are now being used just to capture our attention online. So how on earth did we get here?
Well, believe it or not, it all starts with a declassified government manual. And a technique so strange, so out there, it was actually named after a children's book.
The history of this thing is strange, to say the least. In the 1950s, you've got Scientology's founder L. Ron Hubbard writing about using confusion to make people more suggestible. Just a few years later, the CIA's Kubark interrogation manual gets declassified, and boom, it contains almost the exact same technique. We're talking nearly word for word. So think about that path, from a sci-fi author to a spy agency, and now to the internet.
They called it the Alice in Wonderland technique. And here's the kicker. Its goal wasn't getting information out of a person. No, it was way more ambitious. The whole idea was to use bizarre, contradictory language to literally dismantle a person's logic, to, quote, soften them up for a completely new narrative. This was never about finding the truth. It was about overwriting the mind. So, you're probably asking, why on earth does this work? Well, the answer lies in this fundamental, almost primitive panic button that's hardwired inside all of our brains.
To get this, think about this analogy from behavioral science. Imagine you're falling. What do? You don't think, you don't analyze, you just flail. You desperately grab onto the first solid thing you can find, even if it's a thorn bush. Well, your brain does the exact same thing. When it gets confused, it panics. And it latches onto the very first solid-sounding idea it comes across. With zero analysis, it just grabs on for dear life.
And that panic reflex creates this simple, almost scarily effective, three-step formula for manipulation. Step 1, you interrupt someone's normal, expected pattern of thinking. Break their script. Step 2, create what's called a freeze point. That's where the brain just panics and its logic totally short-circuits. And then, step 3, right in that moment of pure vulnerability, you insert the command. The confused mind just accepts it. No questions asked.
Okay, so, a creepy interrogation technique from the Cold War, check. But what in the world does that have to do with you just scrolling on your couch? Well, that old technique has a brand new name and a much, much larger playground.
In modern terms, it's often called fractionation. And really, it's all about emotional whiplash. By rapidly cycling you between high emotions, like joy or hope, and then plunging you into low emotions, like fear or anger, it keeps you constantly off balance. And an off-balance brain, that's a suggestible brain.
In an interrogation room, this meant cycling between the hope of release and the fear of punishment. Now, think about your social feed. It's the exact same principle, just happening way, way faster. You see a funny meme, then a tragic news story, a cute puppy, an infuriating political post, all within seconds. That emotional roller coaster? It isn't an accident, it's a design feature.
And this is the secret strategy of so many modern online influencers. See, they don't just sell you a product. First, they have to sell you chaos. They tell you the world is broken, you're doing it all wrong, you're stuck. They create that falling feeling. And then, once you're feeling scrambled and desperate for a solution, guess who's right there holding a solid-looking branch for you to grab? They are, with their course, their program, their trust.
Now, you take all of that, the confusion, the emotional cycling, and you supercharge it. You layer on top one of the most powerful psychological forces we know, our deep-seated obedience to authority. You've probably heard of the famous Milgram experiment. Back in 1962, ordinary people were told by an authority figure in a lab coat to deliver increasingly powerful electric shocks to someone in another room. Even though they heard screams, complaints of a heart condition, the results were absolutely chilling. A staggering 2/3 of participants went all the way to the maximum voltage simply because they were told to.
The takeaway from this was clear.
People kept going just because an authority figure calmly said, "The experiment requires that you continue." You don't need to be a monster to do awful things. You just need to be obedient. And if you think we've evolved past this, think again. A 2010 replication found almost the exact same results. Nothing has changed.
But here's the thing. Today, the face of authority looks a little different. The man in the lab coat has been replaced by the influencer with the blue verified checkmark. The authority isn't scientific, it's social. The likes, the follower count, the carefully crafted image, these are the new uniforms that command our obedience.
And all of this brings us to the final and most important piece of the puzzle. What is the end game of all this manipulation? It's so much bigger than just getting you to click a link or buy a product.
And look, this isn't just a theory. A 2022 study found that the rapid emotional cycling, what we're calling fractionation, can increase our vulnerability to persuasion by nearly 50%, especially when the message comes from a perceived authority. The effect isn't just real, it's quantifiable.
This brings us to the ultimate, terrifying goal: identity hijacking. First, the system creates tribal confusion with bots and fake consensus just to make you doubt your own eyes. It pushes you through those emotional cycles until you feel totally lost and scrambled. Then, it sells you the solution, a new identity. Join us, be one of us. And once your identity is involved, your behavior becomes predictable. You become programmable.
This creates a fundamental, almost unfair mismatch. Our brains are running on ancient software, you know? It's largely unchanged for 200,000 years. It simply can't compete against algorithms that have been fine-tuned with trillions of data points, designed specifically to exploit that very wiring. We just don't have a built-in firewall for this.
So the next time you're scrolling, remember this. It isn't just a feed. It's a behavioral laboratory. The techniques that were once state secrets are now just content. And the real question isn't if you're part of the experiment. The question is, what version of the script are they running on you today?